So hopefully everyone will stay during the recording. Okay, and we're up to 12, so we're a little over halfway there. So let's go ahead and begin. So if I haven't already met you, thank you for coming. I am your CDU online librarian. And oh, Heather was going to give the introduction, so I'll let her do that now.
All righty, thank you. So yes, Stephanie is our CDU librarian. She has a Master of Science in Information Sciences from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. She also has a Bachelor of Arts in Theology with a minor in Philosophy from Aquinas College in Nashville, Tennessee. Stephanie believes that the Catholic faith and its teachings about human dignity provide a full and generous lens to view interpersonal engagement as a librarian. She is passionate about integrating her faith with her professional life and believes that it strengthens and supports her contributions to the world. She also seeks to recognize in everyone the human person for whom Christ died, which is from 1 Corinthians and Romans. And her personal objective is to bring into greater focus the sacredness of every individual. She enjoys helping students with research and paper writing, which again is also why she's offering this Zoom session for you guys. And she also likes to assist faculty and students with the use of technology in the digital learning environment. So I turn it over to you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am a librarian. I'm a theological librarian with, I studied theology, I studied philosophy, and I spent a lot of time in the writing center. And so I like to share the things I learned. And because I also know, like many of you, when I went to college for my very first time, I was already older. I put myself in college when I put my kids in college. And so I know what it's like to have to learn to do this in the digital environment, to have to come back to write a paper after many years of not having to write a paper, having to write in the formal academic environment, which was a lot different than writing a business memo. So that's and I know what it's like to feel nervous and feel insecure about it. So I'm always looking for ways to make things easier. And I'm hoping that from today's session that you will walk away with a better understanding of writing as a process, and that your objective is more than just showing your teacher what you know, but you're able to enter into the scholarly conversation with the authors of your sources, and learn how to, if we get enough time, a little more talk on how to acknowledge the value of others who you discover through your research, through proper citation. We may move over and do some of that, but I don't know if we're going to have enough time. So we will see how far we get. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little icebreaker. And you should see that here. You can scan this QR code. Once again, if you have a phone, or you can go to menti.com and enter this number. And then you can put in your 3 words that you would use to describe your writing process. I'm going to copy this link and put it in the chat also. And that's another way you can get to that. So if everyone would take a minute, and as you do that, you should see your words come onto the screen. And if you have trouble using the Mentimeter, you can always feel free to just put those your words in the chat as well. Anyone have questions? Oh, here we go. It's updating. Stressful, confusing, procrastination, frenetic, unimpressive. Is that you feel unimpressed with your writing, or self-educated, entertain, but stressful still seems to be the number one word. We've got challenge. Okay. I often feel like if I could just have some notes and talk, it would be much easier for me to complete, to turn my assignment in, than when I have to make that change from having it come out through my fingers on my keyboard than when than if I was just to talk about a subject. So, all right. Thank you. We've got lots of good things going on there, but stressful still seems to lead the way. So hopefully by the end of this session, it'll be a little less stressful. Okay. So we're going to start with really talking about the purpose of when you write. Okay. And the Association of College and Research Libraries talk about writing and research in the college environment. And this is a lot of technical jargon from them, but it also, when we break it down, it has a lot of important things that we say. So, or that we do when we're writing, and we need to recognize that. So when we're writing, we're not just writing for a grade. We're creating information to convey a message to a particular audience. And so I want to start this session by thinking about the ways all the different ways that we convey messages. Okay. We send text messages, we leave notes or Post-its. We do, some of us still do voicemails, which my children tell me are really irritating. Just send me a text. So especially in our text environment, our messages cannot always are received in the manner that we want to convey them. And so when we're writing an academic essay, we're writing a message in an appropriate manner for our studies. And so think about the things that, and how we write in those things can be different. Like I also drive my kids nuts by using complete sentences and punctuation when I do a text message. But that's the way I write all day and I help people write all day in an academic essay, because it comes natural to me. And when you also want your message to be conveyed in the appropriate environment. You wouldn't want to be terminated from your job by a text message, nor would you want to propose to your fiance by sending them an email. So this may sound very basic, but there's a benefit to pausing and thinking about it, because a lot of times students say, well, I want to show my style and my flair in my writing. And when you're doing an academic essay for an assignment, you're following conventions that make you a better writer and make you a stronger writer. And it's more than just listing what you know. Okay. If I give my husband a grocery list, he doesn't necessarily understand what those things on that list are going to translate to in the dinners he's going to eat in the upcoming weeks. So I want you to think of your paper. I'm going to use the analogy that the purpose of your paper, when you go to demonstrate the understanding of your topic, it's like showing your full meal plan with the recipes. You want to include all of that information. And sometimes that's where people get stuck. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at that. So your format, you're going to have a format that your essays or you're writing a formal academic essay in a term paper, and it's going to show all of those details from your meal plan are going to come together from your grocery list are going to come together to make that beautiful meal plan that everyone enjoys this throughout the week. And so the same thing's going to happen in your paper. And going back to that quote about that you're gonna deliver information or in a format, a particular format. One of the things that you want to understand when you're delivering this information in your paper, that you're not just sharing the knowledge that you learn, but you're sharing the understanding. So we're gonna work with how to take the facts and turn them into or share not only the facts, but the meaning of the facts and the theory behind what you're learning. Catch up here in my notes. So rather than simply listing them in your essay, you're going to explain the meaning of those facts. And while you can have a body of coherent facts, you need to include the theories and assumptions that make those facts coherent. You're going to use in theological writing, it's really often that students take their research when they're first starting out and they make claims that are verifiable in the source documents that they use to make those claims, but they forget that when they're restating it, they don't provide the same supporting evidence for their audience so that they can convince their reader of what they know and persuade them to follow their viewpoint. You're also, when you may know something is right or wrong or true or false, but when you restate that to your reader, it's going to require more than just simply stating it. You also have to explain the why and why not. So here we go. Let me go to this next slide. So when we're working in the next steps that we follow, we're going to do a lot of things to challenge you or show you how to challenge everything in your viewpoint so that you can look at your paper through the eyes of your reader and don't leave them hanging with unanswered questions. We want you to answer them in their paper. And I'm going to put up another poll right quick. Let me see here. I'm going to end this poll. And let me get, hold on. Oh, here we go. I'm going to launch this second poll. And this is a paper planning poll. So if you would take just a moment and answer the 5 questions here.
I'm not seeing anything. I don't know if others are. I just see a black box, Stephanie.
Okay.
Oh, never mind.
There we go.
Now it's populating. Thank you.
Sorry, it just took a minute. I'm on a really slow internet. Okay, we just about have everybody's results in. 2 more. I'm so happy to see we have people who revise their paper and make outlines. Okay, just a few more seconds. Hopefully the last person is able to answer the poll. And then we'll have had 100% participation. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here and share the results. So we have 60% of people start with a research question. That's good. So storyboarding may be new to some of you, and we're going to talk about that. I find it really useful when I'm organizing my notes and my references. I'm glad to see everybody, for the most part, uses an outline and revises their paper. Nobody's trying to do one and done late night right before it's finished. And then most people start with their introduction, and then others start with their body and go back. Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing that. And we're going to move on to writing. The one thing I hope everyone gets from here is writing is not a linear process. And research and writing are an interconnected, iterative process. And so I have this graphic here. Let me close this window. Okay, and so while your writing process begins with your research, we're not going to talk about how to research today. We're going to talk about how to use your research today. And it's not always a simple read, write, and turn in your paper. Sometimes you have to go through it several times. And so I'm going to walk through a process that's going to do some of that iterative reassessment as we go along, all through the process. And so you can write, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a circle. You can write and assess and write and assess as you go along. But having a process or a format to follow will make it much easier. And so in our case, we're going to begin with the research question. A lot of times students come to me and they say, what are the best sources to write about this topic? And from English 105 and some other classes, here are 3 really common research questions that people have, but they can be very broad. And so we work to change that into a question. What about your topic do you want to find an answer to? So if your topic was icons, you could be asking yourself, why did the church have to address the issue of icons? Or what were John Damascene's contributions to the Second Council of Nicaea in their ruling on icons? So those are 2 specific questions you can research. Mary's role in the church. Well, there's a lot of different roles for Mary. So you could answer either one of those questions and have a good and full essay. And so you want to take your topic, turn it into a question, and then it does things like it keeps you in conversation with the ideas you're reading about in your research, and it helps you make a more persuasive argument. And that's something I probably should have said earlier. Understanding that any academic writing that you're doing, in most cases, probably 90% plus of the time, that academic writing is persuasive writing, where you're trying to get someone to understand and agree with your argument that you're going to make. A lot of times when people bring me their papers to go through, there are two common things that I see. They have lots of claims with no evidence, and they have lots of evidence, or they have lots of evidence with no claim. So when you think about your topic in terms of a question, it's gonna help with finding both of those things and keeping them in the forefront of your mind, both evidence and claims when you're writing. Also, having a good question can help you improve the quality of sources you use, because it's really hard to write on a topic that you can't find the answer to your question to. So you're finding the right topics. Just like Chris Paget tells his Theology 204 class in his video about finding their sources, you can't write about Mary without including something from Lumen Gentium. You've missed something big in most cases. So thinking about your question, having a good, strong question will help you have a much stronger paper. So for those of you who are writing a paper this term, would you be willing to share in the chat, if share in the chat what your research question is for this term, or your topic, and how you would put it in a research question? I have crickets. Is everybody typing? Okay, so Sister Rosanne has the role and vocation of women in God's plan. Can you turn that into a question? It could be as simple as, what is the role and vocation of women in God's plan? Or what are the roles and the vocations of women in God's plan? Okay. What was Joseph Ratzinger's position on the nature and grace debate? Okay. Maritza, human ecology and the connection with environment. Okay. All right, Maritza, how would you ask a question about? Would you ask, what are the connection between human ecology and the environment?
Yes, I'm working on divided. What is human ecology and what is environment, to find the connection between both.
Okay. All right. So could your question be, is there a connection? So, and that's, so when you're asking a question of your sources, it helps you understand better how to use them, because you're going to look for an answer. Okay. And so we're going to go on to engaging your sources and asking them some more questions. Okay. So when you found your sources that you want to use, and you have your question, and you're going to look at your question, or you're going to look for answers to your question, and with the goal of finding maybe 3 premises that you can make, or claims that go to that go in alignment with your question, or three answers. So if I let me go back and look at the chat and look at the questions again. So Sister Rosanny, could you share what you think are three roles or vocations for women?
I think I will look for being a daughter, being a mother, and being a spouse.
And being a spouse. Okay. So keep those in mind, because those are going to come into play later. But with those, especially when we go on to when we talk in the next section about our plan. But if we have those three roles that we're going to use, okay, then when we look at our sources, we want to engage those sources by thinking about them critically, by finding creative ways that they agree with our claims that we're going to make, is also how they disagree. And what I did here is I supplied some examples of sentences that you would use. I borrowed these from the Turabian. So they're in your Turabian book for more information. But when you're looking for this creative agreement and how you're going to write about it, you can say, I gave this example. So if you have a situation that covers, or your claim might cover more situations than your one resource covers, you can explain in a question. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to give these as examples of things to be thinking about as you're writing. And I wanted to give examples first, so that you could think about the way things are agreed with or disagreed with. So that when we go on to step 3, where we make a plan, okay, we're going to make a plan by taking our the information we found in our sources, and we're going to develop a thesis statement, and we're going to then organize our notes to support that thesis statement. So right quick, I'm going to show this quick little video that explains much more coherently than I do how to take and make your thesis statement. So. Okay. So if we go back and we look at um, our research questions, and we think about Sister Rosanne's, she said, what are the role and vocation of women in God's plan? She could turn that into a thesis statement, and she could say, God has a plan for women because he's given them the role of motherhood. Sister, I forgot the three things you said: motherhood, sisterhood, and I forgot the third one. Sorry. Spouse. And spouse. Sorry. I should know those. But so, and then you can, so you have your statement, you take your thesis or your research question, you make it into a short statement, you add the word because, and you list your three things, and those become the actual framework for the rest of your paper. And then for those of you who have never used a storyboard, I'm going to open one up here. And how this works is, in a storyboard, you could put your topic or your thesis here. And then when you're going through your notes, you can take each claim, okay, or premise. You could talk about motherhood, spouse, sisterhood, one in each column. And then you could put your notes that you want to talk about here. And this is a form that I used a lot. I know that Maritza has learned the benefits of it.
Yes.
Yes, and I like it that way for making those connections that I can then move into my outline. The other one I have here actually works well with the next thing that I'm going to show you on making good arguments, and it always goes back to also step 2 with all those different questions that you can ask. But I have another storyboard here that deals with, you could list your claims across the top, and then your reasons to support the reasons for those claims, your evidence to support it. You can acknowledge and respond to any anybody who disagrees or has a different view. And then this last topic is for a warrant, which is a different way of connecting some of these, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And this whole LibGuide, or guide that we're showing, will be in the library, so you can download and make copies of these. The other thing you want to do is you can then take from here and maybe develop. Some people can write directly from here. Some people need more structure, and so they can develop an outline. And I've put different types of outline, so you can choose one that might be more appropriate for the type of paper you want. For those of you who have met with me in the past, I have a worksheet. You can also download that here. I'm going to open it up. Oh, where'd it go? And this worksheet actually starts with your research, but the things we're talking about today go in the pull it together section, where you look at your articles and take notes. And then when you're moving and trying to do your introduction and your the body of your paper, these are things you want to consider and write about. So you could follow this and map out and write your paper. What is your hook? What do you want to tell someone to catch their attention and get them interested in reading your paper? What's the state of the literature or the context that you're going to that you looked at, or the context that you're going to write your topic and that you're going to write your topic from? How do you want to fit your argument that you're going to make into someone's way of thinking. What's your thesis statement or your claim, which we just figured out how to take the move from our research question to our thesis statement. And then as you go to support your different claims, you'll define terms as necessary. You'll write out your premises and the evidence that supports them. You'll do this with every premise that comes along. You'll also, anything that you come along with that you disagrees, you're going to write it out with your objections and maybe why the other person's arguments are flawed. And from there, you'll write your conclusion where you restate your thesis using different terms than you did in your opening paragraph or introduction paragraph. And and you also need to make sure that it follows logically from your three premises when you write your conclusion. So you also have this in your toolbox now to use. Okay, now we're going to go on to some tips for making good arguments. Okay, now an argument, okay, I said earlier that all papers are, for the most part, in an academic setting, are persuasive people, or it's persuasive papers. So you're making an argument, but an argument is like a set of facts. You're going to have an amiable conversation about your sources, and it's going to be an amiable conversation with your readers. You're not going to get up on your soapbox and talk about your feelings or the gospel according to whoever's writing whatever you're writing about, your thoughts and concerns, without giving any supporting evidence. You also want to make sure it's not abrasive or oppressive, because when we're saying argument here, we're not talking about intimidating or silencing opposition. We're talking about showing evidence and facts. And there are building blocks of a good argument. You're going to have your claim, which is what you want your reader to believe. These are your premises and your points. And you're going to have your reasons. You need to be sure you include your reasons for why you said something and why your reader should agree. You're going to have evidence. So that's what comes from your sources. How do you know, and how do your sources back it up? You're going to have acknowledgement and response of what about other people that don't agree with you, how you're going to respond to that. And then a warrant is, then that was listed in that first storyboard. How does it follow? Your warrant is where you're going to explain your logic and explain your reasoning. So if you include all of these things when you talk, all of these four things, when you talk about your claim, you're doing more than just listing all the favorite quotes you found in your paper. And it's important to understand how to incorporate your quotes in your paper, because you want to actually include as few direct quotes as possible. Okay, you only want to include an exact quotation when it gives evidence that backs up your reason. It's in its words are strikingly original, or it expresses your idea so compellingly that you couldn't write it any better. Also, when you're stating something that you disagree with, you want to quote it exactly so that you know that you are not misconstruing anything. And so we have a list of best practices for when you quote. But most of the time when you're writing, you want to paraphrase. Okay. You want to be able to state what your sources tell you more clearly and more concisely, depending on your argument. And then we have some ideas for or best practices for paraphrasing, and you have to be really careful when paraphrasing so that you do not this they call patchworking, where you just replace a few words. You need to be able to restate that idea on your own within the proper context for your argument. And then there's also summarization. And you use this when you're going to share a summary of what somebody else or summary of what someone else said in your source, but you don't need to include all of the detail. And over here, you can find examples for how to quote. It repeats some of the information, but you have more examples for what an appropriate quote looks like, how to paraphrase, and how to summarize. And it gives examples all from this same block of text has been summarized, paraphrased, or quoted. I'm going to stop here because I've thrown out a lot of information, and I'm going to let you ask questions. So I don't know if there were any questions in the chat as we went along.
I don't think so.
Okay. Right. There we go. Does anybody have any questions? That was a lot of stuff, like how to use a storyboard or how to go from the storyboard to an outline.
A question.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes I over research. So when do I know that I have enough research to start my storyboard?
When do you know when you have enough research?
Yes.
I think that's why it's good to have 3 premises, like starting out. It depends on the length of your paper. And Professor Harvey, if you may have more thoughts on this, if you would like to jump in, please feel free. But it's going to depend on the length of your paper, how many sources you need. But and so when I'm looking at if I have enough sources, I may need to look at what type of sources I have. And if I have all primary sources, I may still need some more, because you really need to include secondary sources as well. Your primary sources are going to be your evidence. Let me go look at the storyboard right quick. So when you're looking at this storyboard, your primary sources are going to be the evidence. That's the original words, thoughts of your saints or your papal encyclicals. So those are the evidence. But when your reasons and the disagreements that you acknowledge and respond, And then your warrants are going to come a lot of times from understanding the conversations others have had about your evidence in your secondary sources. So each situation is going to be unique. If you just keep running down one claim and have lots of things to go with it, it may be that you have too much in one claim and not enough in another claim. But you want to be sure, if you just have evidence, but you don't have reasons from other sources or things to disagree or agree with or respond to, then you know you still need some more sources. But once you've been able to answer all of these different types of material to include in your paragraph or your response, then you know you have enough. Does that make sense? Can you see what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to back that up a bit. So again, my name is Professor Harvey, and I teach several English courses here. And my process, I also like to have a kind of a few aces in my sleeve, or perhaps that's the wrong analogy, but an extra source on the primary sources and the secondary sources, so that if something comes up, maybe I've realized that I haven't made the argument as clear as it can be, and perhaps I presumed too much in my question and I need to start over, I messed up somehow, then I have a couple extra sources I can still turn to, and I'm not at the last minute starting the whole research process again. So if I'm writing, let's say, what is the sacramental theology of the communio leaders? So I might say I want to focus on Balthasar and Ratzinger and de Lubac. And then I might throw in there a couple of other figures that are less known. I might just write them on my list, what are their texts and such, and for my primary sources. So that if something happens and I find out perhaps, this source didn't actually have as much to say, I still, in my research, I kind of left a few extra sources hanging in case I needed extras to come back to later on. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I find it's helpful when you're going through the process.
Thank you.
The only other thought I had was in terms of if a paper is meant to be more of a comparison or contrast type situation where you want to get not necessarily conflicting things, but you want to give a certain presentation of two different viewpoints, or maybe even multiple viewpoints on a certain topic, then I would agree with what Professor Harvey said here, is make sure that you kind of have your key figureheads or thinkers, or sometimes you need to narrow it down to a decade or a century, or, I mean, it could be a school of thought. There's a lot of distinctions within theology and philosophy, obviously, but if you are going to be trying to kind of discuss something from more than one viewpoint, you want to kind of narrow that down to your key people, and then try to get just a main summary understanding. And that way, especially when these papers aren't very long, it gives you a chance to give the presentation of here's what they thought, or this other person or this other group had this differing view, but not necessarily to be the one to cast judgment of, well, they were all wrong or they were all right, but rather to give a discussion of how their viewpoint is helpful and what it teaches us and where we find common ground in these, and perhaps to identify the real major issues that they have with one another, or the things that create great disparity, but just to kind of allow the reader to percolate on those things with you through the paper. I think, you really achieve a certain level of success even by simply displaying that you are able to engage in that kind of discussion in the paper and to kind of think through these problems. obviously it is good to have some kind of concluding thought on it, but remember that if it's something that a lot of these great thinkers haven't been able to come to a conclusion on, you don't necessarily want to solve it for them. Because, as we know, there's still, I mean, it's okay to have your own opinion and to share that, but again, yeah, it's helpful to be okay with giving a discussion of something without always having a driven conclusion of, well, this group was always right or this group was always wrong. Yeah, it's more enjoyable, I think, for you too, because you get to learn a little bit more by kind of mulling over their distinctions or their differences. So anyway.
Thank you. Any other last thoughts or questions? I know it was kind of heavy on theory and thoughts. I would like to go back while you're thinking about that and ask you to take some time and look at these questions about engaging your sources and looking for agreement within them and disagreement, and looking at ways people form sentences, I think is really useful as an example. When you're trying to figure out how you want to say something in your paper, it's nice to have different examples of different ways to state how to agree or disagree with something. So that is why I'd wanted to include it for you tonight. So if there are no more questions, then I guess we will conclude. Maritza has a concluding prayer, and also when you exit out of Zoom, there will be a follow-up poll if you are questionnaire about tonight's session. So it's anonymous, so please leave your comments for us so we can find more presentations to give and improve the ones we do give. Thank you.
I'd just like to add in real quick too, if you find yourself stuck in any phase of the process, don't hesitate to contact either Stephanie or your professor, any of us in student life. Again, we're here to help you. I know even myself, in my own pursuit of my MA degree from CDU, there was one paper. I was like, man, I can only think of one way to start this, but this paper is now going to be like twice as long as what it needs to be. And by the time I realized that I was kind of committed to doubling the length of my paper, it was like, I don't know. I no longer have the chance to ask, how can I find a better way to get this started? It seems weird to just kind of jump into my topic. So know that it's okay to ask. Please don't hesitate to do so.
Yes, don't hesitate to do so. I can help you get your word count down if you're going to be over, or I can help you find where to more information to include. I can help you proofread, work on your transitions and all of that. And right before Maritza closes, I'm also going to show you, we'll post this and I'll send it out and post it in Student Life and send it out in Pronto, but it will be so you can go back and look at things. Here I am in the CDU online library. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a site map with all the different things in the library, and under writing help, you will find this guide from this presentation. There's also one on sources, identify them, and another one on citing. If you ever need help in the middle of the night, there are lots of tools there for you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Maritza.
Okay. From the shortest book of blessings, a blessing for today. Lord, our God, in your wisdom and love, you surround us with the mysteries of the universe. In times long past, you sent us your prophets to teach your laws and to bear witness to your underlying love. You sent us your Son to teach us by word and example that true wisdom comes from you alone. Send your Spirit upon the CDU students and the teachers, and fill them with your wisdom and blessings. Grant that during this academic year, they may devote themselves to their studies and share what they have learned from others. Grant this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yes, thank
you.
you,
Hope
Stephanie.
to
Thank
see
you,
you.
everybody, for
Yep.
being here.
I hope everyone took away something new and useful. And come see me soon.
We will.
Okay.
Have a
Good
great
night.
night.
You
Good
too.
night, everybody.
All right.
everyone.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.